The story of Israel begins, a narrative woven through millennia, etched in the landscapes of the Middle East and the hearts of its people. It's a story of faith, resilience, and the enduring quest for a homeland. Not with kings or armies initially, not with grand conquests or imposing empires, but with a promise, a sacred binding agreement that would shape the destiny of a nation. This promise, whispered in the sands of time, is the cornerstone upon which the entire edifice of Israelite history is built. This promise unfolded in the ancient land of Canaan, a crossroads of empires, a melting pot of cultures, and a strategic nexus where East met West. It was a land coveted and contested, a region teeming with diverse peoples and powerful kingdoms. Into this vibrant, complex world, according to Hebrew tradition, walked Abraham, a figure of immense significance. He journeyed from Ur, a prosperous Mesopotamian city, guided by a divine call, a voice that resonated deep within his soul, urging him to leave behind his familiar surroundings and embark on an unknown path. He was called to a land promised to his descendants, a land flowing with milk and honey, a future homeland for generations yet unborn. This covenant between God and Abraham, a solemn pact sealed with faith and sacrifice, became the bedrock, the very foundation of Jewish identity, shaping their beliefs, their values, and their understanding of their place in the world. It was this covenant that began forging a lasting bond between a people and a place, a connection that would endure through trials, tribulations, and triumphs. The early Hebrews, primarily semi-nomadic shepherds and farmers, tending their flocks and cultivating the land, lived among Canaanite tribes, interacting, intermingling, and sometimes clashing, their story chronicled in the ancient texts of Genesis. Jacob, later called Israel, a name signifying his divine encounter, fathered 12 sons, the ancestors of the 12 tribes, each destined to play a crucial role in the unfolding narrative of the Israelite nation. A devastating famine, a harsh reality of life in the ancient world, drove them to seek refuge in Egypt, where they were initially welcomed, but eventually subjected to brutal enslavement, setting the stage for one of the most iconic events in their history, the Exodus. Led by Moses, a prophet and leader of unparalleled stature, the Israelites escaped bondage, miraculously delivered from the clutches of Pharaoh. At Mount Sinai, they received the 10 Commandments, a divine code of conduct, and were transformed from a group of former slaves into a nation with a shared law, a common purpose, and a divinely ordained destiny. After 40 arduous years in the wilderness, a period of testing and purification, they finally entered Canaan, engaging in a series of conflicts, conquering and settling the land, under the leadership of Joshua and a succession of judges, charismatic figures who led the tribes in times of crisis. This turbulent era, marked by both triumphs and setbacks, laid the groundwork for a unified kingdom, a centralized power structure that would bring stability and strength. It was a time of transition, leading to the rise of Israel's first kings, figures who would shape the political and religious landscape of the nation for centuries to come. The tribes of Israel, a collection of distinct groups with their own customs and territories, yearned for unity. They established a monarchy, a centralized form of government, to face external threats and forge a common identity. This marked a significant shift in their societal structure. Saul was the first king, a figure chosen to lead them in battle and represent their collective will. But it was David, a shepherd, poet, and warrior, who truly captured the hearts of the people and shaped the kingdom's destiny. His story is one of humble beginnings and extraordinary achievements. David, with his military prowess and strategic brilliance, captured Jerusalem, a city that would become synonymous with his reign. He made it the nation's heart, the political and religious center of Israel, a symbol of their newfound unity and power. David's son Solomon, inheriting a kingdom secured by his father's victories, ushered in an era of peace and prosperity, a golden age marked by economic growth and cultural flourishing. Solomon is best known for building the first temple, solidifying Jerusalem's role as a spiritual center, a place of pilgrimage and worship for generations to come. Yet Solomon's ambitious building projects came at a cost. His heavy taxes and forced labor, imposed upon the people to fund his grand vision, sowed seeds of division, resentment simmering beneath the surface of his glorious reign. After his death, the kingdom split. The north became Israel, the south Judah, each with its own king and distinct identity. Prophets like Elijah and Isaiah, figures of moral authority and spiritual insight, warned against corruption and idolatry, urging the people to return to the covenant with God and uphold justice. But the northern kingdom, plagued by internal strife and weakened by its departure from religious principles, fell to Assyria in 722 BCE, its people exiled, scattered across the vast Assyrian Empire, their identity lost to history. Judah, however, endured, clinging to its faith and traditions, holding on to Jerusalem and the Davidic line, the promise of a future king who would restore Israel to its former glory. The once united monarchy was now two rival states, each vying for power and influence, their destinies shaped by foreign empires and internal strife, constantly navigating the complex political landscape of the ancient Near East. The prophets' voices echoed, a constant reminder of the need for repentance and social justice, urging a return to faith and justice, a call for the people to live according to God's commandments and care for the vulnerable in their society. The stage was set for new trials and transformations, as Judah faced the looming threat of powerful empires and the challenge of preserving its identity in a changing world. Judah survived Assyria, but Babylon's rise brought disaster. In 586 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, exiling the elite to Babylon. This exile forced the Jewish people to adapt. Synagogues emerged and sacred texts were compiled, preserving identity in foreign lands. Persian King Cyrus allowed their return. The Second Temple was built, and Jewish life revived in Yehud, a small Persian province. Greek conquest under Alexander brought Hellenism, sparking both attraction and resistance. Seleucid oppression led to the Maccabean Revolt, the temple was rededicated, Hanukkah's origin, and an independent Hasmonean kingdom briefly flourished. But independence was fleeting. Rome's arrival loomed. The Jewish people's resilience was tested by shifting empires and cultural tides. Their faith and traditions, forged in adversity, would carry them through the coming storms. The next chapter would see both catastrophe and the seeds of survival. Roman conquest ended Jewish independence. Jerusalem fell, the Second Temple was destroyed, and Jews were exiled. The diaspora scattered Jewish communities across continents, but faith endured through rabbinic teachings and sacred texts. Despite persecution and dispersion, the longing for Zion remained central. Next year in Jerusalem echoed in prayers. Jewish identity adapted, rooted in law and memory rather than land. For centuries Jews lived as minorities, facing hardship but preserving hope. The dream of return to Eretz Yisrael persisted, fueling resilience and unity. This ancient yearning would one day ignite a modern movement for national rebirth. In the late 1800s, Zionism transformed the dream of return into a political movement. Theodor Herzl called for a Jewish state, and waves of immigrants began building new lives in Ottoman Palestine. World War I reshaped the region. Britain's Balfour Declaration supported a Jewish homeland, but also promised to protect Arab rights. Under British mandate, Jewish immigration surged, clashing with Arab fears of displacement. Violence and revolt marked the era, as Britain struggled to balance competing promises. The Holocaust intensified the urgency for a safe haven, galvanizing support for Zionism. Britain, unable to resolve the conflict, handed the issue to the United Nations. The stage was set for a historic decision and a new chapter in the land's story. In 1947, the UN proposed partitioning Palestine into Jewish and Arab states. Jews accepted, Arabs rejected. Civil war erupted, displacing thousands. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion declared Israel's independence. The next day, 5 Arab armies invaded, launching the War of Independence. Against the odds, Israel survived and expanded its territory. The war created a lasting Palestinian refugee crisis and deepened regional hostilities. For Jews, it was a moment of triumph and return. For Palestinians, a catastrophe, the Nakba. The new state's existence was secured, but peace remained elusive. The conflict's legacy would shape the region for generations. Israel's early years, following its establishment in 1948, were characterized by a constant state of alert. Border clashes with neighboring Arab states were frequent and deadly. The 1956 Suez Crisis saw Israel, in coordination with other nations, embark on a campaign into the Sinai Peninsula. Britain, seeking to regain control of the Suez Canal, and France attack Egypt, aiming to topple the government of Gamal Abdel Nasser. However, international pressure, primarily from the United States and the Soviet Union, forced withdrawal of all invading forces, marking a significant moment in Cold War politics and Middle Eastern affairs. The uneasy peace that followed was short-lived. Tensions escalated dramatically in the lead-up to the 1967 Six-Day War, with Arab nations mobilizing their forces along Israel's borders. Facing what it perceived as an imminent threat, Israel struck first with a devastating preemptive airstrike. In a matter of days, Israeli forces achieved a stunning victory, capturing Sinai Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the strategically vital Golan Heights from Syria. The swift and decisive victory transformed Israel into a regional power, altering the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. However, the occupation of these territories brought new challenges and complexities. Israel now faced the responsibility of governing a growing Palestinian population under Israeli control, a situation fraught with tension and resentment. The capture of East Jerusalem with its holy sites was a moment of profound national pride and religious significance for Israelis. But it also deepened the conflict with the Arab world and fueled Palestinian nationalism. In 1973, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise coordinated attack against Israel. Caught off guard, Israel suffered heavy losses in the initial days of the Yom Kippur War. However, after a period of intense fighting, Israel launched a counterattack and ultimately repelled the invaders, pushing back into Syrian and Egyptian territory. The Yom Kippur War shattered illusions of invincibility that had taken root after the Six-Day War. The war, despite Israel's military victory, exposed vulnerabilities and opened the door to diplomacy and new approaches to resolving the conflict. UN Resolution 242, passed in the aftermath of the Six-Day War, called for land for peace. This resolution became a cornerstone of international efforts to resolve the Arab-Israeli conflict, setting a framework for future negotiations. The wars of 1956, 1967, and 1973 redrew borders and hardened divisions in the Middle East. Yet, amidst the conflict and suffering, these wars also hinted at the possibility of peace, however distant it may have seemed. The struggle for security, recognition, and a lasting resolution to the conflict continued, shaping the region for decades to come. The trauma of war led to historic breakthroughs. Egypt's Sadat visited Jerusalem, and the 1979 peace treaty returned Sinai to Egypt. Yet, the Palestinian question remained unresolved. The First Intifada erupted in 1987, leading to the Oslo Accords in 1993, limited Palestinian self-rule and a handshake of hope. Extremists on both sides undermined peace. Rabin's assassination and Hamas bombings deepened mistrust. Final status talks failed, and the Second Intifada brought even greater violence. Israel built a security barrier. In 2005, it withdrew from Gaza, but conflict persisted. Hamas seized Gaza, leading to blockade and repeated wars. The peace process stalled, replaced by cycles of violence and political deadlock. The dream of coexistence faded, replaced by hardened realities. The conflict's human toll grew, and solutions seemed ever more distant. Yet the search for peace endures. In the 21st century, Israel became a global tech powerhouse, forging new alliances through the Abraham Accords. Yet, conflict with Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon remains frequent and devastating. Internally, Israeli society is vibrant but deeply divided, between secular and religious left and right, Jews and Arabs. Settlement expansion and debates over identity fuel polarization. The unresolved Palestinian issue and regional threats cast long shadows. Israel stands at a crossroads, prosperous and innovative but facing profound challenges. Its future depends on bridging internal divides and finding a path to peace. The story of Israel, born of promise, shaped by struggle, continues to unfold, its destiny still being written.